Hello. Today I'm going to talk about setting up an Ionos VPS to run Frostybot. Now, I chose a flexible cloud server because I didn't actually know what I needed to run Frostybot, and I didn't want a situation where I couldn't make changes quickly and efficiently. So I created this system to walk through the entire process for you. Now, it's important to understand that I did this with permission of Ionos, and that at no time will any security outside this server be compromised. And by the time this video is published, more than likely, this server will simply disappear. So here is my server to be destroyed, mangled, mimed, and all the rest of it. Very simple, very easy, very straightforward. This is your dashboard. Here is what I chose for my base system. 1 core, 1 gig of RAM, and 20 gigabytes of hard drive. Nice and simple. Enough for my system to run and do what it needs to support Frostybot. Now, I went with plesk to maintain the firewall. Yes, I know plesk is expensive and can be a pain, but in this instance, it really does do a good job for making it easier to keep track of what your system resources are. So, now that we have the basic overview, we're going to proceed. And before I get too involved in a lot of technical stuff, I will probably end up making this video in sections and segments. So I will try to use pauses between each section. Sometimes I have to check and cross-check each section to make sure I get them in order, as I've actually only set this thing up once, and I managed to get it right the first time. So some sections can be a little confusing even to me still. So expect the pauses as a way to keep the video from being too disjointed and too uncoordinated. Now that the server is running properly, and we have the basic configurations and settings necessary, we need to be able to hook up an SSH program to be able to log in to the VPS by itself. For that, we need to go to security and get the SSH key. It is important that you must have this link here. Otherwise, you cannot connect at all to your VPS. You have to be able to download the SSH key into your SSH program to connect to your VPS. So we are going to download it now. Notice it has my primary one, and we're going to add one. Now again, this key is going to be compromised, so it's not a big deal because it is going to get wrecked. And this entire process will be deleted after I am done. Okay, as you can see, it has just downloaded my keys. You have to have this information in order to properly be able to log in to your VPS. Let's close this. Now that we have our SSH key downloaded, we need to set the system up with the SSH client. Before you do though, be sure you write down the IP address, the username, and your password. Pay particular attention to things like zeros and ones, as they tend to look like O's and I's. Once we've done that, then we switch to our SSH client. I am using a tablet, so my client is Juice SSH. As I've said before, I just find this approach a lot easier. So let's see if we can set this up so that it works properly. First, let's pause my password manager. If you don't have one, you should get one. It's the only way to properly protect yourself and making sure you have different passwords for every single system you work with. Now, here is my IP address. As I said and shown, this came off of the dashboard. Now, we need to create a new identity. And as you can tell, I have done this 3 times already without success. So don't be surprised if you do have to redo it a few times. I'm going to show password to make it easier for me to see. Verify your password, make sure it's correct. Now we set the private key. We are importing the one we have, which we downloaded. And if everything goes right, I will hopefully be able to log in to the VPS. And it did. We are greeted with our VPS. From here, we simply need to install Frostybot. For that, the best place to start is with the Frostybot web page. Finding the install section within the documentation, and you can do this 2 ways. Either 1, type this in exactly as it is here, or 2, try to copy and paste. I'm going to try 2 just so I get it right, because that is quite a lengthy set of commands to type. So now we go back to our SSH client, and each client has its own means of pasting content. If you're in Windows, you can use Control-V. Otherwise, you will need to use what is particular to your SSH client. My particular client has a long press, and then I simply click on paste. And it goes and does what it needs to do. Okay, so now we are installing Frostybot. And hopefully, if everything is right and I have all of the various tools I need up and running, I will have, within reason, a functional system to begin working with. It is just a matter of simply waiting for the process. And while we wait on this, I'm going to log into my Discord server. I should say my Discord account, Jackrabbit server, and I'm going to go to the DRS area. Because that is where I will get everything I need to operate. And here we are, all nicely done. So now, we need to go into Frosty. And we need to issue a special command to put Frosty on its own port. One of the big things about Ionos that you need to be aware of is that it comes pre-installed with its own web server, and that can be problematic. So you will need to put Frostybot on its own port number separate of the web server. And this file goes in the Frostybot folder itself. It's a very easy file to make and a very simple file. All you have to do is to think of and keep a port between 2,000 and 30,000. So that should be a fairly easy number to come up with. But be sure you write it down so that you know exactly what it is that you're going to use. You have to be able to use this port within your Frostybot connection, as this is how you're going to have to set up your firewall and conditions. And we'll get to that shortly. This is also how your TradingView and the the DSR, is going to communicate with your system, is through this specific port. I'm going to choose port number 270584. So this is my port, and I'm going to have it sent to a file called .port or period port. So we're going to tell Frostybot that this port is what we want it to run on. And we're going to make sure it gets listed into that port. So there we are. So now to look at the contents of the file, and we see it is the port we want. Now for good measure, we're going to upgrade it. And this will also restart it for the purposes of picking up the new port address. It should be up to date. Okay, it recognized it. Now, let's stop. Okay. And start. Okay, everything should now be working properly. So now that we have the port, we need to add the whitelist. And that is easier said than done, as it can be a little bit confusing at first. But it really is not. So if you plan on using the duplicate signal remover, you have to do this step. If you plan on just connecting TradingView to Frostybot and going on with life, you're done. All you need to do is give your webhook, which would be the IP address, colon, your port number, /Frostybot to TradingView. So your webhook would look like this. Not the echo command. This is just so you can see it clearer. This, starting here, all the way down, is your webhook. This is what you give to Frostybot. That is also what you give to TradingView. That is also what you give to me if you want to be a part of the DSR system, as this lets my system communicate with yours. Now the echo command just prints it, that's all. Nice and simple, and this is your webhook. Now your IP address will of course change appropriate to your server, and the port will be the one you pick. Be sure you keep this information well documented in your trader's journal. Frostybot is now installed and running, and now we are going to begin working with the whitelist. So let's start with the first command. This is assuming that you want to use the DSR system. Nice and simple. Okay, so the first IP address, Get that confused. Integromat. Don't worry about it wrapping. That's fine. So, the first IP address and the Integromat server. Press enter, and you should be greeted with a success. Now, we need to do this 8 other times. Actually, 7 other times. So we need from 110 to 117. So we have 110. Now we're going to cheat. Press the up arrow, go back, change this with the backspace to 111, and do it again. We're going to repeat this all the way up to 117. Okay, there we are. Now let's see if I remember the command to view it. Okay, I need to, here's another cheat. Les will slow it down so I can read it. Okay, there's TradingView. And it didn't add the whitelist. Why not? Did I mess something up? Yes, you will find that mistakes happen quite honestly. And I did. I was right the first time. So we do it again. It's supposed to be an equal sign, not a colon. So 110 to 117. As you can see, mistakes happen easily, but they're not permanent. Then they're easy to fix. And sometimes recognizing that something went wrong is your best thing, which isn't always obvious. But again, no harm done. Just simply go through, take care of the steps, and simply repeat the process. And this time, when I go to check if the whitelist was enabled, we should be greeted with all of Integromat's addresses. So it is definitely an equal sign and not a colon. And I think I made that mistake in the DSR area as well. I did. So ignore the line with the colon. And now your Frostybot is ready to connect to the DSR. Don't get stressed out if you type something wrong and it gives you an error message. Just correct it, either by going back to the command like I did with the up and down arrows and then using the arrows to correct it, or simply retype the command. Now, I'm not going to get into adding the API because that compromises an exchange, but the Frostybot documentation is very clear how that process should take place. So follow the documentation clearly and you should be fine. For now, I'm simply going to exit out of this server. And it is done. Frosty is ready. And you can see that by looking at your tree. I think I'm going to do that in the other side. So for now, let's simply exit. Now you do need, and you should, close your connection with your SSH client properly. Just don't close it by clicking on the X or anything like that. Close it out by simply exiting from your system with either the exit command or the logout command. So now we are going to go back. Be sure you read the documentation. This is important. It goes through everything clearly and properly, including a lot of the other features and responsibilities that you need. For example, using the account. It goes through and explains how to set up your account, how to trade, so forth. So be sure you spend time reading this material. It is very important. And it helps to log into and join the support server. Now we're going to go back to our system. Now we move to the most difficult part of the entire process, the firewall. And I say the most difficult part because it actually took me 2 days to figure out all of the intricacies within the Ionos firewall system. The first part is actually pretty easy, but the second part was really problematic until I figured out what needed to be done. This will also be the first time we log into the plesk desktop. So as you see here, I've scrolled down to plesk on my Wasteland server. Now I'm going to cheat, click on this, and open it up in a new tab. Now you could get an error, and it says here that the browser will give you an SSL error, or SSL warnings. Just click OK and keep going, and you'll get this screen. It's not a serious problem since it's your server. So now we type in the password to our plesk server, and it is always the same as the base server. And I'll show you that here. So right here, plesk, click on show password, the same password as your main server. You should change it or armor your system heavily, or both. So let's go back to plesk. I don't know where to begin with this kind of a page. To be honest, this is a nightmare, and this is what you see to begin with. So please do not ask me any questions on this, because I have no idea. What I suggest you do is come here to change view and click on switch to power user. Now you're going to get all of this stuff, and somewhere down here we have a skip button someplace. If you don't get a skip button, that's fine. Like right now I'm not. So we want to just go straight to Tools and Settings. This is where we do everything. This is a whole ball of wax for anything that is important within your server. And here's what we want: the firewall. Now, according to Ionos support, sometimes this doesn't show up, and you can either call in and they can fix it, or you can come down to here and find the right, okay, here it is. Find the right place and update. That would be update settings. So if firewall does not show up, then this is where you would come. This is part of it. And click on available updates, and it tells you what you need to worry about. And then we go to all packages, and you can see this stuff here. Personally, I don't recommend getting into this unless you're an expert in all of this. I don't recommend going here because it's confusing. So, in all honesty, if firewall does not show up, call Ionos, have them walk you through the steps, or in my case, when it didn't show up, they fixed it for me. No extra pricing, no you need a service technician. It was a simple thing. Their support team had it fixed in a matter of seconds. That's the easiest way if this does not show up. Just let them add it and fix it, because this is a known issue with plesk, that it may not install this module. So click on firewall, and here we are. This is all of the basic stuff coming in. This is the default stuff, nothing changing. But we want to enable the firewall. Yes, I know this is going to be a pain. And it's meant to be. It's to protect your system. So you do want to enable it. And we wait. Now that we have it enabled, now we need to modify, because we're going to add our Frostybot port. Okay, now add a custom rule. And we want to simply come down here, any host, okay. And this is if you want to filter an IP address. We don't. We don't want to do that. And I'll explain that in just a minute. So we'll put that back to default. What we want is any port. And then we want to put in the port number for our server that you wrote down earlier. For this server, it's going to be 27548. And now we add the server. Okay. And let's see if it took it. You may have to do this several times. It did. We didn't get the name right, but that's no big deal. I'll show you how to click on Discard Changes. And we'll go back and we'll do it again. This is where you can figure out what you want and get it right. Let's properly add it. Now, here's what I did wrong the first time. I wanted to explicitly say Frostybot. Now, all this is the way it should be. We want any port, and we want our port of 27584. Now we want to find my mouse, and I want to add it. Okay, now that it is added, now we click on OK. Now we come down and we look. Here it is on any and all ports. This is what we want because we want to be able to use the Frostybot GUI. So that means it needs to be able to read an incoming web request as well as an incoming trade request. So we don't want to limit this because the web request is going to come from your web browser. So this is the way we should have it. Now, be sure you must absolutely apply changes. If you don't do this step, this won't take effect and it won't let your system communicate. So apply changes. We want to activate these rules and we wait. Done. Now, our VPS is ready to accept requests. So, from the Tools and Settings menu, easy way is if you have the firewall right away, which you should have, click on it, add your port, modify and add, not difficult. Take your time. As you see, you can make mistakes. You can go back and correct them. You can even delete and so forth. Not a big deal. Take your time here. You can't hurt the system. Whatever you do can easily be undone. For example, if you do make a mistake, you can simply click on it and click on delete. Delete the mistake. So we're going to delete the mistake and we're going to redo it. Now add a custom rule. Give it the name we want. Make sure TCP UDP is up to date and set. And then type in our port. I'm going through this a few times because it can be confusing. After you add it, come down and click on OK. Now, check to make sure it is exactly what you want. It should be at the top, the very first line, just like you see it here. Click on Apply. You must apply it. Absolutely, unequivocally, this step must be done. Now, this part is done, and this is probably one of the most confusing parts. So we simply close this out now. We're done here. Here is the part that took me 2 days to figure out. And if you don't do this, you get nowhere. because I found out Ionos actually has 2 levels of firewalls. Yes, you heard me right. Ionos has 2 levels of firewalls, and you have to set them both in order for anything to get to your server. So you want to come down to Network, come down to Firewall Policies. And now, unlike the plesk firewall that is specific to your VPS, this firewall is specific to your account. So you need to be very careful with what you do here. There's a lot of different ways you can actually manipulate this, but I'm going to show you with just a very basic, simple process what needs to be done for Frostybot. So right here's the default. Click on it. Come down. These are all the default rules. And now here under port 27584, click on the check mark, and it's added the rule. Now we come back up and you wait for your system to work. We wait for this to finish. While this is finishing, I need to emphasize, you must take this extra step or nothing is going to talk to your server. This is probably one of the most aggressive VPS firewalls I've seen on the market, and they do it to protect you. So you need to set your plesk firewall, and you need to set your network account firewalls. The plesk firewall only affects that individual VPS. This firewall affects your entire Ionos account. They both must be accurate. This is the hard part. We simply have to wait it out. It's the way it is. Wait it out and just, well, be patient. Now, while this is working, I do want to talk about plesk. You are going to be spending $5 a month for it. It is a royal pain. It is very easy to get lost in it, and I still get lost in it constantly. But when it comes to maintaining the system, like the firewall and some of the unusual settings, it makes the job significantly easier if you don't know every little detail of Linux. I have built my own Linux machine from the ground up, including the hardware. I actually ran the Slackware version after I built the hardware, and then I installed it. And I modified it and ran it for 10 years through a server. There are a lot of tiny little areas that you may only touch once a year. And it can be very difficult to find mistakes in that kind of a system. For as much as I despise plesk and having an extra expense every month for something that I might only use once or twice a month, maintaining the system is definitely an advantage if you don't know every nuance. And if you decide to expand your system, then it is incredibly important. Okay, now our new firewall is loaded. If you want, you can change this. I'm going to, just for the sake of it. Change it, press enter, done. Now we are going to see if we can talk to Frostybot. This is why you don't want to limit the IP address, because this will be the best and easiest way to tell if your system is working. It's also the fastest way. Now, this is the IP address of your VPS, a colon, and then the port you gave Frosty to use. Press enter, and lo and behold, we have Frostybot. Now, as I said earlier in the previous section, read the documentation and you can enable this to give you a way to control Frosty through your web browser. But this is what we want to see. This tells us our VPS is now live and working. Now you can go into your Frostybot documentation, go to the accounts section, and learn how to add an account to your Frostybot. Let me see if I can quickly find the area here. Okay, it should be here or the section below. Okay, that's the installation. So let's come to managing. Okay, talks about it, managing it, how to upgrade it. Here is how to enable the GUI. That command is what you need to put in your SSH client to enable the GUI. And of course it shows you what it should look like, so forth. So now let's see if we can find out where we add a command, add an account. Okay, linking your exchange, here it is. Now, as I said, I'm not going to do this here because I'm not going to compromise an exchange. I have permission to wreck this server, not the exchange. So this is where you want to go, command line, and then adding the account. Now, you can probably also add it through the GUI. So either way will work, whichever way you feel comfortable with. Read this material. It is important. And it talks about the account status, how it checks it, how to add an account from within your VPS. So follow through and do what it tells you. Follow exactly the directions it gives, and you will connect your Frostybot to your exchange. So that being said, at this point, you have a fully working system. So now, you can either give this webhook to your TradingView for your alerts to go directly to your Frostybot, or you can give this webhook to me if you want to join the DSR system. At this point, it's up to you which direction you want to go. but you have a fully functioning and working system. You are ready to talk to the world, and it is ready to trade on your behalf. So just remember, go through plesk, set up the plesk firewall, go through network firewalls, and while I'm here, there's one thing I do want to talk about. If you see a box where no IP address is assigned, you need to assign one. And you would just click on it and click on assign. And sometimes you can just click on assign. Let's see if I can get it to do it. Okay, I've already assigned it, but you would simply see the ones you want here. So if you don't see your server listed here, click on assign and then click on the server. And be patient, because it will go through and you'll see this cycle as it reloads the firewall. So easy, straightforward, very simple. Now for my final thoughts. As you've seen from each of the steps I've done within this video, setting up Frostybot with Ionos is not all that difficult as long as you follow the steps. You want to be able to maintain a clean and efficient system, and this does just that. As you work with Ionos, sooner or later you're going to get to the aspects of usage and billing. Now, Ionos is not the cheapest system out there, but it's important that you understand how things work. And as you can see, here is my Wasteland server. Everything is metered and counted. Now, I have backups already that I have done, and you do pay for backups, which I will show next in the actual billing cycle. As you can see, my first month was only $6. My second month was $25. And I'm currently up to almost $5 for this month. So you can click on it, and it actually tells you component-wise what each section will cost you. Yes, this does look like what it suggests. You are being nickeled and dimed to death. But you choose what you are being nickeled and dimed on. Let's go to a previous bill. Here's what I paid for my server. Each item broken down and explained in detail. And yes, here is your plesk license. So, my total server costs were $22.28 for last month. That's just the server. You do pay for backups. Now, they will prorate your backup, but nonetheless, you are still going to pay for it. And it's this amount per gigabyte per day. So it works out for a full month, $2.88 per backup. Again, you are nickeled and dimed to death, but you choose what you are nickeled and dimed on. I went with the Flex server, as I said in the beginning, because I did not know what I wanted or needed, and I didn't want to be stuck in the middle, finding out I didn't have enough, and have to reprovision an entire server to fix any kind of problems that I had. I wanted something that I could change on demand, something that I could figure out as I went and as I needed to, what I really needed. Ionos makes that easy. In the event that you do need to upgrade your server, or you need more memory, it's a simple matter of changing it right here. So as your system grows, as your needs grow, you have the availability to change what you need. So if you want to increase your drive space, you can. Now I do warn you, reprovisioning your drive is a royal pain. They do give you extreme, precise, and well laid out directions that you need to follow explicitly, but it can be done very easily. For my purposes though, I picked what I needed early on as a rough estimate. For my principal system, I went with a higher level, but this amount works well for a beginning system, as I demonstrated in the setup process. But if you find that you are having memory issues, well, you can simply increase your RAM to whatever you want. And you see clearly how much you pay for each change. So you can grow your system slowly as you need to. You don't need to bite off more than you can chew or bite off larger amounts than you can afford. And that, in my opinion, is why the Flex server is the best choice to start with. It gives you the best opportunity to actually grow on the basis of what you think you might really need in the beginning. The web space for Frostybot is more than enough. If you do a lot of trading, you might need more memory. If you have problems with your system not performing properly, you might need more CPU power. You can find all of that out here. It tells you in detail the warning levels, your current levels, and the same thing with your RAM, current usage, and so forth. And if you click on the arrows, it takes you to the monitoring section, where I'm going to click on RAM, CPU, RAM, and network. And I'm going to go for the last 30 days. Apply it. And now I have a very clear idea. As you can see, I have not been running very long, and so there's nothing really here to worry about. Let me switch to my other server, to my business server. And now you have exactly how my business server is performing. So my CPU level right now is very good. I won't need to worry about this for a while. So one CPU is fine. 1 gig of RAM, I'm using 25% of it. Once I start hitting 75%, I'll probably bump the RAM. So this gives you an idea of how well your system is functioning. And of course your network. Nothing over the top here. Pretty straightforward and simple. So Ionos provides you a way of monitoring everything carefully where you can see just what you need to deal with. And you also get an idea of when it's a good time to expand before you run into problems and start losing trades. There are a lot of different areas to take a look at, but really this is the most important. So from the principle and standpoint of the Flex Cloud server, I personally think it is the best place to start, though it is not the cheapest. It does give you the greatest flexibility if you're looking to do any kind of serious trading where you don't want to be bottlenecked over time. For example, in my case, I've got a little additional added to my system because I'm running a much heavier process than just the standard Frostybot. I'm also running a full web server and a full development system for the DSR. So for me, I have a big beefier system. And with everything that I am running, as you saw, I'm only using 25% of my RAM. So this is why I personally think this is the best place to go. Flexibility is everything, and this gives it. Now you may end up having to watch this video more than once or pause it in the middle while you're doing these steps yourself. And as I mentioned in the SSH section, your own SSH client is going to be different than mine. This is done completely and entirely on a tablet for me, as I believe, and in my case, the tablet is just easier to work with. If you have a PC, then you can probably try to search for things like and then trying to get information out of the and it wants to work, but it doesn't want to, but you get the idea. Let's see if I can get the Help Center open. Okay. Well, you can get access to the Help Center a lot easier than this as well. I'm going to have to file a feedback on this. But you can find out how to connect PuTTY to your VPS if you run a Windows-based system. There are a lot of ways, plus Ionos support will email you a lot of different contexts if you need. Let's see if I can find a different way into the help system. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to go searching for that because I still get lost in this thing. But you get the idea of how well it will work. It does have a lot to it. You will get lost in it very easily. Take your time. You're not going to hurt it. Follow the steps. Double check your work. And you should have a very simple system. Until next time.